Owen Thompson.
Thank you, Sir Edward. It's always a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and I'd also thank the member for High Peak in bringing this important debate today. I think it's also important to thank all the NHS staff working so hard to keep services running during this very difficult time. All the cancer charities working to keep the funds coming in, to keep awareness high, and to support those living with cancer diagnosis. High-profile breast cancer awareness events like the Wear It Pink photo calls that we're all so used to were lost to the virus this year, so there is a lot of ground to be made up to keep the UK's fourth biggest killer high in the political agenda. Thanks to a combination of advances in medical sciences, treatments, early diagnosis and screening, breast cancer survival has doubled in the last 40 years, but the necessity to disrupt routine screenings has created a real danger of progress taking a significant step backwards. There are immense challenges now for the NHS in meeting an influx of demand, while we are clearly still in the teeth of the pandemic. As members of the Royal College of Radiologists report, challenges are made all the tougher by the extra infection control measures needed at screening centres, limited availability of space due to distancing, and staff and equipment shortages due to redeployment at times. Breast Cancer Now, as others have said, has estimated nearly 1 million women in the UK missed potential life-saving mammograms because of COVID-19. There was also a marked fall in urgent breast cancer referrals from GPs during the pandemic. This is down to a range of factors, including reluctance to take up the scheduled appointments, the worry about catching the virus, or a lack of awareness that while routine screenings were paused, the majority of cancer treatment services did continue throughout. According to Macmillan Cancer Care, 100 fewer women started treatment for breast cancer each working day in May and June 2020 compared to just a year ago. And they estimate 50,000 missing cancer diagnoses across the UK because of COVID-19 disruption. These are serious causes for concern. Cancer patients cannot be allowed to be collateral damage as we struggle to fight the pandemic. All of us have a role to play in encouraging the take-up of opportunities for screening, for self-checks and for getting the message out that the NHS is there for you, and if you're worried about cancer. COVID continues to dominate the headlines, but the NHS has never stopped prioritising cancer cases. Governments also have a role in communicating about cancer services and to make sure the investment in facilities and staff is there in the NHS cancer workforce. And as the RCR reports, the clinical radiology workforce was already under strain before the pandemic. 1 in 4 English trusts have at least one vacant consultant breast radiologist post, and the UK has fewer CT and MRI scanners than the majority of comparable OECD countries. Decisions on this NHS are obviously made by the devolved administration and the devolved government in Scotland, and thankfully the Scottish Government is working to minimise disruption in the face of the COVID-19 challenges. They've invested an additional £10 million to support cancer treatment throughout the pandemic and beyond, in addition to purchasing 6 additional MRI and 3 additional CTI scanners to aid cancer diagnosis at a cost of £5.6 million. There is much to be done, but I welcome the fact that there's been an 89.6% increase in consultant oncologists in Scotland under the current SNP administration, and a 54.4% increase in consultant radiologists. Early detection will also be improved by more GPs. Scotland has 76 GPs per 100,000 of population compared with the UK average of just 60. There are also 2 new early cancer diagnostic centres which will be opened in the spring of next year. In terms of the petition that today's debate refers to, I of course have a great deal of sympathy for the request to extend screening to younger men and women. It's always heartbreaking to hear of cases which are not diagnosed early enough, leading to long battles to fight the disease and greater chance of loss of life being lost too early. We know the risk is related to age and it's highest in women over 50, accounting for 80% of cases, but that's cold comfort to the 10,000 women under 50 and the 370 men in the UK who receive the dreaded diagnosis each year. Catching it early is essential to saving more lives, and I would back screening for all in a heartbeat if it was justified clinically. But it's just one tool in the toolbox, and it's not always the best one to use. There are harms as well as benefits to getting mammograms, and decisions on routine screening programmes is all about getting the balance right. 4 nations of the UK all take advice on screening from medical experts at the UK National Screening Committee, and the Scottish Government would concur with the points made in the UK Government's response to the petition. If there's one thing the pandemic should have taught politicians, and perhaps even the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, it's that we should be listening to experts who their views are so important. It's the scientists and clinicians who are guiding us through the pandemic and providing hope for a solution through their incredible efforts to find treatments and vaccines. So too should we trust the evidence on screening. The Marmot review of these benefits and harms of breast cancer screening identified overdiagnosis as one of the dangers, stating the consequences of overdiagnosis matter. Women are turned into patients unnecessarily, surgery and other forms of cancer treatment are undertaken, and quality of life and psychological well-being are adversely affected. Only 1% of cases are men, and there is a need for us to focus on the messaging there to make sure that awareness that breast cancer is still possible in both sexes, albeit far lower risk for men. Perhaps we all need to do that bit more to highlight this point to make sure that men self-check and seek treatment where necessary. While there is largely consensus in the science, there has perhaps more divergence on these aisles on the resources needed. Warm words about tackling cancer are easy, but it needs to be backed up by sustained and substantial further investment. Ahead of November's comprehensive spending review, the SNP had called on the Government to increase funding for the NHS in England to match per capita spending in Scotland. This would have amounted to a £35 billion increase by 2023-24. The £3 billion offered for the next year is only a third of what we've been calling for on a yearly basis. After a decade of austerity, the sum's not even enough to cover the cost of outstanding hospital repairs in England, let alone recover from the coronavirus and deliver decent cancer care moving forwards. I'd urge the UK Government to do all it can, and to borrow a phrase from the Government itself, is to build back better and to properly and genuinely invest in the NHS to save lives.